Welcome to episode number 3 of Badass Jews. This episode of Badass Jews is brought to you by Hummus by Hamas. That's right, it's a new hummus you're going to find on all the aisles of Trader Joe's and Whole Foods. Hummus by Hamas, taking your favorite thing and mixing it with your least favorite thing. And it could be either way, depending on what side you're on. Hamas by Hamas is guaranteed to be blah, blah, and take 2 on the read, but keep rolling. Hamas by Hamas is guaranteed to be the sandiest, worst hummus. Wait, take 3 on the read. Hamas by Hamas. Boy, it's a tongue twister in there, isn't it? How did these people expect me to get this first voiceover done right? Hamas. Take 5. Hummus by Hamas is guaranteed to be the sandiest, grittiest, worst hummus you've ever laid your filthy mouth onto. That's right. Hummus by Hamas is bad. Made in the bowels of Hezbollah tunnels. That's right. This hummus is guaranteed to give you diarrhea or constipation. It is bad hummus, and it is made by the bad people at Hamas. Hummus by Hamas, now at Trader Joe's, Whole Foods, or at the dollar store located with all the toys. Hummus by Hamas. Get it or don't. Nobody cares. But if you're indifferent, people will be really upset. Hummus by Hamas, best enjoyed in a tent on a university campus. That's Hummus by Hamas.
Where do you come up with this stuff?
No idea. Welcome to Badass Jews, episode number 3. I'm Aaron Berg, and in case you forget, these are blood diamonds from Hezbollah, sent to me in a manila envelope, ordered on eBay, and guaranteed real. However, they spelt it R-E-E-L. And here, as always, with my much smarter co-host, Andrew Davidsburg, the world-trained historian, graduate of Yale, Harvard, and MIT. We're going to jump right into it today. How are you, Andrew?
I'm great.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
Good to see you. We got a banger of a show today.
Yeah.
A very special badass Jew.
One
One that you've been fighting to get on the docket for 3 episodes now.
Yes. I don't know why you keep fighting me on it. This is one of my favorites.
I just gave you a thumbs up emoji to your text, didn't even respond. Just did that thing that I do to my wife a lot, where she'll send something like blah, 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 blah. And I go, heart emoji. She likes that when you do that. You keep it succinct and short, and then you argue less. That's what I've learned. Who do we have today?
Amazing. Today we're talking about Jack Kirby.
Good badass name.
Yes. Well,
last week we had Vidal Sassoon, which does not sound badass. By the way, got an 8.2 ranking from me, a 7 from you last week. Jack Kirby.
So Jack Kirby was actually born Jacob Kurtzberg.
Still got a ring to it.
Okay. Jack Kirby, king of comics, badass Nazi fighter, born in the Lower East Side of New York.
I love a good New York badass Jew.
Yeah, he was born in 1917, back in like the heyday of Jewish Lower East Side.
Tenement buildings. Rats.
Yes.
Jews.
Yes.
Braids.
Yes. His mother came from Russia. His father came from Austria. The legend is that his father insulted a German aristocrat.
Ooh, an aristocrat.
The aristocrat then threatened him, then challenged him to a duel. He then found out that the aristocrat was a crack shot. He then left and came to New York.
Starts a fight with an aristocrat.
Yes.
Threatens him.
Yes.
Finds out he's a really good shot.
Yes.
Because I've made a horrible mistake. Leaves, moves continents.
Yes.
Not a very badass move, but smart.
Smart. Yes, indeed.
Father moves to America, had already met his wife or meets his wife here.
Meets his wife here.
In 1917, there was no Bumble.
There was no Bumble.
If you wanted to meet a hot Jewish chick on the Lower East Side, you had to
get a
have
job.
gefilte fish
or get a job at a sweatshop.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Jews had it bad. Yeah.
They met on the floor of a sweatshop in the garment district.
They were both laying on the floor, or they were working on the floor. Sounds kind of lazy. I'm exhausted. It's warm in here. I'm going to nap. I'll me too. I'm napping as well. Are you the fella that ran away from the crack shot? I am. How'd you hear? They call you Yella.
I'm pretty sure that's
not
the conversation.
They were both working.
Conversation
Women could work in 1917.
Yeah, oh yeah. They were
Equal pay?
I'm sure not.
Wage gap.
I'm sure there was a wage gap.
Hillary Clinton's done nothing. All right, continue.
So they meet, they fall in love, they get married.
That's quick.
Jack Kirby's born.
At a sweatshop. You ever date someone you worked with?
Never dated. Well,
I did. Dated a girl named Lori I worked at Planet Hollywood with. She cheated on me with an Irish guy. He was a busboy. She kissed him. Kissed him. That was cheating. Gross. He had gross Irish teeth. Whole bunch of weird lamb and stuff left in him.
That's actually an excellent segue because in the Lower East Side, each street sort of had a different little gang to it. Jack Kirby, young guy, joins one of these gangs called the Suffolk Street Gang, right? At the time, all these different gangs would fight each other. So like on one block or one little neighborhood, you had the Jews. Another little neighborhood, you had the Italians. Another little neighborhood, you had the Irish. So Jack grew up fighting the Irish. And the Irish were fighting the Italians. And the Italians were fighting the Jews. And they're all just beating each other up all the time.
Sounds like a soccer thing.
It does, except these kids, they're all kids. They're like 10 or 12 years old.
Just fighting each other.
This is how they grew up. This is what the Lower East Side was.
This is what made New York great.
Yeah, everybody hated everybody.
Everybody hated everybody.
PC didn't exist because there was nothing anybody said that wasn't offensive.
And they probably wouldn't call each other the Italians, the Irish, and the Jewish. They probably had different...
They definitely did. Which, actually, interesting fact, I learned this week where kike comes from. Mm-hmm. Right? So the word kike comes from Ellis Island, where when Jews came over and they couldn't sign their names, they didn't want to put an X because it looks like a cross, so they would put a 0, right? Just a little O. And O is keikel in Yiddish. Keikel, kike.
Wow.
That's where it came from. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a slur.
It's a slur. We could have a little segment, Know Your Slurs.
I mean, is it a bad slur?
It's bad.
But what makes it bad? Where you would just write a 0.
You just write a 0, but, there was, coming over through Ellis Island, there's another, you've ever heard the term, also not a very nice term, WAP?
Sure.
The WAP comes
Say it all the time when I order pizza.
It comes from without papers. Oh. Ellis Island. So Ellis Island was the gateway to...
What about Dago?
I don't know Dago.
You know Dago, Pete? My wife said it was like Dago over there because her dad was Italian. And I said, I don't know if that's right or not. WAP means without papers.
Without papers,
Kike means 0.
Keikel, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
0.
There's there's another one. If you don't sign your name when you come over with papers here and you forget to enter your first name, they'll write in first name unknown. And I worked with a guy whose name was Fanu. And that's literally what it was short for. It was FNU, first name unknown.
Wow.
Okay.
And then there's FOB, fresh off the boat.
Okay, yeah.
This is a pretty slur-heavy episode. We might have to bleep all this out. But
so anyways, back to it. He's growing up on like the Lower East Side. He's fighting. His little brother was a big guy. Jack Kirby was a small guy. He talks about standing on the street and just trying to find people to fight, trying to see if he can take on 2 guys at the same time, 3 guys at the same time. This is just what they did for fun back then. They beat people up and got beat up.
There was not iPhones. There was you couldn't gamble online in New York in 1917. That didn't come. BetMGM didn't start until 1920. You couldn't there wasn't a lot to do back then. So fighting was a thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Social media.
So he would just look for fights on the Lower East Side.
Yeah, look for fights on the Lower East Side. But he also had some talents. Okay, sorry. So he would look for fights on the Lower East Side, but he never really remembered fondly being on the Lower East Side. It was the ghetto. things were very, very tough. Just like we said last week with Vidal Sassoon, bathroom down the hall, same thing for Jack Kirby.
Yeah.
He has these dreams of growing up first to be an actor. Then he talks about being a crooked politician. But things really take a turn when he sees one of his friends get shot and died. He sees one of his friend's mothers jump off the roof of the building because she just can't make ends meet. And he really, really wants to escape. So as a young man, it was sort of discovered that he had some talent as an artist. He found some charcoal on the street and drew on the walls of the tenement all this panorama on the walls of the tenement. He's caught by the super. The super gives him a whooping, which at the time you're allowed, I guess in 1917 or 1925, you're allowed to beat up other people's kids.
They didn't have the rent's too damn high guy yet. The rent's too damn high. Yeah, they would just beat up tenants. Is this what would happen in 1917?
I guess so.
Boy, things have changed.
But, his mother sees it and sees some potential and thinks, I got to get this guy a sketch pad.
Okay.
So they're not making a lot of money, but they splurge on this one thing.
Another Jewish mother encouraging her kid.
Yes.
Good.
Exactly. One day he's walking down the street and he looks down in a puddle and he sees a magazine called Wonder Stories. And on the cover of Wonder Stories is a rocket ship. Now, he's never seen a rocket ship before, but he's drawn in by the colors that he sees. He opens it up and he sees these stories of outer space, of science fiction, and it just speaks to him on this level of escapism.
Escape.
Getting out. And he starts to draw. He starts to draw these things that he's seeing. He starts to create. And it becomes a passion for him. And it goes from him wanting to be a crooked politician to be an artist.
His dream was to be a crooked politician or just a politician?
No. Specifically, he says a crooked politician.
I mean, that's probably the best type of politician. It works out the best for you. You're not helping the people the most, but you get the most stuff when you're a crooked politician.
Find me a politician that's not.
Okay. I'll start. Vivek Ramaswamy. Got one.
Psychopath.
All right, go ahead.
So, grows up, still fighting in the streets a little bit, gets a little bit more mature, decides that he wants to go to Pratt. So he drops out of high school towards the end of his senior
The Pratt Institute.
The Pratt Institute.
Which is located?
Brooklyn.
Okay.
Brooklyn.
I'll
Right?
believe what you're saying.
Right?
Yeah, you don't have to say it twice.
I think Brooklyn. No, I'm saying it twice because I believe it's Brooklyn.
Yeah, it's
And
the
if
Pratt Institute.
Yeah, and if I say it twice, then it's the truth.
Okay. Yeah, it's in Brooklyn.
There's some ambiguity about whether he was there for a day or a week. Supposedly his father was fired, so he had to go off and make a living. But I've also heard that he was drawing too fast and Pratt wanted him to slow down. He was a very, very quick artist, could draw very, very quickly. And Pratt Institute wanted him to lean into fine art, which wasn't a place he wanted to be. Drops out, gets a bunch of odd jobs drawing signs for street vendors, stuff like that. He ends up at Max Fleischer Studios. So Max Fleischer Studios is the home of Betty Boop. It's the home of...
Wow, I didn't know she was a real person.
You mean the person that created? He met her on the floor.
Person that created Betty Boop.
Yeah, and they produced Betty Boop.
Okay.
So they produced Betty Boop. Bimbo. They produced Bimbo, which is the weird sort of like Mickey Mouse knockoff looking thing. And then they produced Popeye the Sailor Man.
Which is a classic.
Yes.
My wife believes I'm her Popeye. She says that. She used to wish for a Popeye, and now I am her Popeye. Now, Fleischer Studios looks to be this place where kids would dream of going, and they'd probably move to New York to go to a place like this to learn to draw and make comics.
Yeah, so everyone believed this was the big time, and probably at the top of it, it was. Unfortunately, with animation, especially during this time, it was before computer-assisted design or anything like that, or digital animation. Every single cell had to be drawn. So if Popeye is punching somebody,
Yeah.
you got to draw his fist at his side, then bringing it up, then up a little further, then up a little further, drawing every single angle.
Tedious.
And he's drawing Popeye, and he's thinking, this is no different than working on the floor of a factory, of a sweatshop. This is no different than working in a
So many stories start on the floor of a sweatshop for Jewish people.
So he leaves. And
There's this thing about work that when you don't want to do it and you want to have this dream, then you find out the dream is work, then you're kind of like, oh, this stinks. Yeah, I'm going through it right now. Not at this moment.
Okay,
I mean, in general, I didn't mean with you.
I apologize.
No, I didn't mean with you.
I'll speed up
No, you're doing great.
Thank you.
I mean, yeah.
Thank you.
Jerry Seinfeld said he used to watch construction workers and they'd be out there doing 8, 12-hour shifts. And he's like, if they could do that with something they hate, I could do that with something I love. So that would lead you to believe that Jerry Seinfeld was writing so proficiently. But then if you see his act, you're like, oh, he's been doing the same act for years and years and just tweaking it. That being said, I'm a big fan. He's a real nice guy.
Did you see his Duke commencement speech?
Yeah.
It's fantastic. I loved it. I loved it. So, all right. So 1938, a few things happen, right? So first and foremost, Action Comics #1 is released. So what was in Action Comics #1? Superman, created by two Jewish boys, Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, right? This sort of sets the comic book world on fire, right? People get excited about it. Young kids are buying it. He becomes like an overnight
I love the
sensation.
cover of it, by the way. Can we see
yeah.
the cover of Superman #1? Which, by the way, you can tell is done by two Jewish guys because it looks like Superman is a civil litigation lawyer who's arrived on the scene of a car crash. And he's like, let me pick this up for you. And the poor guy's like, I've injured something horribly. And the other guy's running off. I can barely run. And this guy's like, oh, God, I'm going to get sued for everything. Superman. Simon Rakoff had that joke. All superheroes are Jewish. Superman, Spider-Man. It was a really silly joke, yeah. Okay. But it looks like that, yeah. Have you been injured in an automobile accident? I'm Superman. I'll come down and clear that car away for you, and we'll get you the most for the least. Looks good.
Yeah. I think that's what they were going for. So
I took you off track there.
Yeah. No. I appreciated it. I've never looked at Superman.
I mean, why is the front end so damaged? It looks like Superman smashed that car into the rock where he's trying to make a case. Was the car injured? Wait, before the cops get here, let me ding it up a little bit.
Insurance fraud.
Yeah. You swear this is true, Superman? Oh, yes, I was there. Definitely. This definitely happened. Oh, gewalt, my car.
So it's
1938.
Regardless of hidden messages, it sells 200,000 copies.
Which back then was huge.
Huge.
Which now would have sold millions.
Huge, yeah.
The first one sold on eBay for $4,128,633 in 2023.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's unbelievable, the value of these comics today, because everyone just threw them away. Everyone's mother threw them away when they left the house.
Mm-hmm.
So the superhero craze starts to launch. He's still bouncing around a little bit. He ends up at a shop named Fox Comics, where he gets connected with a guy named Jaime Simon. Goes by Joe Simon.
Very Jewish.
Yes, yeah, goes by Joe Simon, and they team up together to create the team of Simon and Kirby. They set up their own shop. They end up doing work for a guy named Martin Goodman. He's a bit of a shyster, but he's running Timely Comics, which is the precursor to Marvel. Meets his wife, gets married, and they create like some less than memorable superheroes. The Vision, Red Raven, nothing too exciting until in 1940, they're tasked with creating a new superhero, right? At this time, there's a lot of patriotism in the United States. Everyone is sort of on edge about whether or not they're going to be, the U.S. is going to be entering the war. And they come up with Captain America.
Oh,
Captain America.
love it.
Now, the amazing thing about this is that on the cover, they draw Captain America punching Hitler in the face.
Come on.
Yeah. The first cover is Captain America punching Hitler in the face.
Yep.
Now, what you got to remember, this is before the U.S. enters the war. So to show them punching a leader of another country.
It's like announcing the war before the war starts.
Yeah, which only a few days...
Hitler's probably there like, what is going on? Who is America? Why are they coming for me? I have syphilis. I have syphilis, my brain. I think he had syphilis. I'm not 100% sure. If you were to put that comic out now, people would be like, what is this January 6th they're doing to this poor person?
Yeah, he was just misunderstood.
Yeah, yeah, that's what they would say. Man, Captain America is going to kick some Nazi butt. Look at that. Someone shoots at him, but he's like, no, it just doesn't even look. The shield just bounces it away. That old senile Nazi in the back is just trying to get his coat rack out of there. And then there's a television. They didn't know back then. They had to write television on it. And then these other guys are trying to shoot at him, too. Then one guy's talking to the TV. Cut to commercial. Cut to commercial. Look at those dumb Nazis. Look how dumb they drew them. But look how good Captain America looks. Look how ugly bad guys look.
Yeah.
And look at the size of Hitler's nose, by the way. That was a big nose on Hitler back then. Boy, that was some Nazi propaganda done in reverse.
And if you look at the TV, you'll even see on the TV, it shows a saboteur blowing up U.S. munitions.
Yeah.
So, again, war has not begun, but fascists are marching in the streets of the United States.
Okay.
If you remember episode 1, Joseph Greenstein was beating the crap out of them.
Yep.
So he's already showing that they're here and they
wow, I love this. Captain America rocks.
Yeah. So this is immediately a big hit.
And who's Bucky? He's a special needs kid? What's Bucky doing? Is this DEI? Why is Bucky working with Captain America? I mean, Bucky, I don't know what's going on with Bucky.
Yeah, there's a few iterations of Bucky.
Okay.
He becomes a little bit less...
Was Bucky a they? A them? Was Bucky a boy? What was happening with Bucky back then?
Bucky was a boy.
All right, Bucky was a young, special boy.
Yes.
His parents refused to drown him when he was born. They let Captain America take him under his wing. I'm Bucky! Yes, you are. Now let's go fight Nazis. I did not see that coming. I'm Bucky! All right.
So that's Bucky.
Yeah, that's Bucky.
This is a big hit. He gets at one point Kirby gets a call from. Oh, I'm sorry. He'd also changed his name to Jack Kirby at this point, not because he wanted to sound less Jewish, but because he wanted to sound like you just want to have a more Hollywood name.
Okay.
So he gets a call from Fiorello LaGuardia that says, "You're doing a great job. Keep it up." He also gets a call from a bunch of Nazis in America.
You're doing a horrible job. Stop it now.
He's getting threatened.
Yeah.
He's getting
phone call threats.
Phone calls,
Nice.
mail. At one point they call and say, "We're waiting downstairs for you. When you're done, we'll be here." Mm-hmm. He says, "Don't go anywhere. I'm coming down now." Goes downstairs and there's nobody there.
Of course.
There's nobody there.
Yeah.
So
I wonder if people think those threats would ever work. Don't go anywhere. We'll be downstairs when you get it. Oh, boy, I better change everything I'm doing. All right. Guys, I'm here to tell you, you really got to me, and I'm not going to do what I do anymore. And thanks for the phone call and letting me know. I was just really scared of being beat up.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, nothing ever happens to him. At least
course.
in the United States. They
Yeah.
don't do anything. They don't do anything. He ends up, he's working for Timely for a while, and then there's a dispute over royalties for Captain America comics. Basically, Goodman says, "You're not getting any." And so Kirby and Simon and Kirby start to have conversations with DC Comics, right? At first, they're having conversations sort of, quietly. This is around the time that Stanley Lieber enters the picture. You might know as Stan Lee. So Stan Lee is Martin Goodman's, I think, like maybe cousin's son or wife's cousin's son or something like that. He's just sort of hanging out around the office at this point, not really doing anything according to Kirby, not really doing anything of value yet. Just hanging around playing his ocarina.
What's his ocarina?
It's like a little flute type thing.
Just
like
hung out around the office doing that?
Yeah, this is according to Kirby. Yeah. So there's the ocarina. Yeah, it's just like a little like flute sort of thing.
Okay.
It's not like a real instrument per se. It's like a kazoo.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man, times have changed.
Yeah. Oh, and yeah,
it's the fidget spinner of the day.
Stan Lee ocarina. Yeah. So anyways, they're having these sort of quiet conversations with DC. All of a sudden, they get fired from Timely. According to Kirby, Stan Lee narked on him, sold him out.
Said what?
Said to Goodman, they're having conversations with DC. So they immediately fired him.
Wow, Stan Lee's a stoolie.
Yeah. So they leave, they go to DC, they do a little bit of work at DC, do a little bit of work around. They get into some disputes over royalties. Again, it's not necessarily important because in 1943, Jack gets a draft notice, right? He's a parent, sole breadwinner, so he's able to defer a little bit. He's not like a gung-ho soldier. Like he's not like, not so excited to go over and fight. He says that he defers so he can get enough work backlog that he could go into the army, kill Hitler, and be back before the readers missed him.
That's pretty fast.
So in June of that year, it's June of 44 or 43, he enters the army, right? They put him in the auto pool, grew up in the Lower East Side, never driven a car before in his life, flunks out of the auto pool very quickly, and he ends up in F Company under the command of General Patton, and he's sent off to France 2 months after D-Day.
Okay.
Right? Still a very, very dangerous time to be there. So, so when he gets there, he goes up to his commanding officer and says, listen, I'm an artist. You see my dog tags, they say Jacob Kurtzberg, but I go by Jack Kirby, and I created Captain America.
Google me.
Yeah. Exactly. So, he's of the mindset that he's going to be able to land a plum gig like Stan Lee, who was working on phone lines back in the States as his army service. Other guys are making propaganda posters and stuff like that. So he's thinking, I'm going to go up, tell him I'm an artist, and he'll give me one of these plum gigs. Poor timing. As it turns out, his CO was just reamed out by General Patton, who said, our maps suck. We need better maps. We need to know where the enemy is.
Yeah.
So his CO says, hey, that's fantastic. I'm so glad you're an artist because I need somebody to sneak behind enemy lines and tell me where all the where all the guns are.
Your gift is your curse.
Right. So Jack Kirby goes from being a guy in the auto pool fixing cars to an infantry soldier to a scout, where he says that if someone wants to kill you, they make you a scout. So he's sneaking behind enemy lines. At one point, he talks a lot about being close to German soldiers and being able to like hear each other talk and flinging insults and stuff like that. At one point, he has this like surreal experience, right? Sneaking behind enemy lines, and he sees abandoned inn, right? Goes inside the abandoned inn, and like out of the corner of his eye, he sees this bar. On the bar is a bottle of liquor. Now, in France at the time, it's freezing. It's cold. Liquor is something that can help keep you warm. It's like a prized commodity.
Yeah.
So he lets his guard down for a minute, walks over to grab the bottle of liquor off the bar. As he's grabbing the bottle of liquor, he hears a click. turns around. There's 3 Nazi soldiers sitting there at a table drinking liquor. Puts his hands up, turns around, and he thinks he's done, right? These Nazis are drinking a little bit. They're sort of making fun of him. They don't know that he speaks Yiddish and a little bit of German, so he can understand what they're saying. He can hear them saying all these anti-Semitic crap to him. At one point, they get close to him, and he sort of feels like maybe everything's going to be okay. And the German turns back around and hits him in the stomach with the butt of his gun. And Kirby doubles over and his dog tag falls out. When it falls out, they look at it and see that his name is Jacob Kurtzberg, and it's got a little H on it. And H stands for Hebrew. So now they know for sure that he's Jewish. And he knows at that point that he's done. They got him down on his knees. They're continuing to drink. They're continuing to insult him. He's sort of, he's an artist. So he's sort of observing it almost from like a third person perspective, seeing these Nazis and noticing how like he's all dirty and covered in muck from being out in the cold. And they're like pressed khakis. They got like swastika patches. They got like medals and their hair's all pressed. They're clean. They got these really nice jack boots. And in each of the jack boots, they got little knives. They keep insulting him. And then they start to talk about his mother. Now, as Kirby describes it, a red sheet comes down, that he loses all sense of color and all he sees is red. In an instant, he reaches forward, grabs a knife out of one of the jackboots of the Nazis, and goes to town. Basically, blacks out, or reds out. When he sort of comes to and remembers again, he's laying on the ground. There's 3 dead Nazis on top of him, and he's got the knife of one of the Nazis in his hand. Walks out of the tavern with liquor, only one alive.
How's this happen?
Because he's Jack Kirby.
I mean, there's 3 Nazis with guns. He grabs one of their boot knives.
So remember, with sidearms and with guns, if the distance is closed, you do Krav Maga.
Yeah.
If the distance is closed,
You can defend against the
you
gun.
can defend against the gun.
Yeah.
A knife is a more effective weapon. They also been drinking. So, element of surprise, this guy's like a berserker, takes out 3 Nazis and walks away.
I love it. Guy's a Nazi killer.
Yeah.
Killed 3 Nazis
Yeah.
at close range with a knife.
Yeah, and to be clear, he's this is a difficult experience for him. He's a comic book guy, he's a storyteller, but for years on, he would wake up screaming in the middle of the night and say that he could still hear their screams.
Ah, why are you stabbing me? I was just trying to have drinks with my friends. Get to the chopper. Go, get to the chopper. I'm dead. Oh, Stroganoff.
Yeah. So that's pretty much the way it went down.
Wow.
Yeah.
Then he leaves.
So he leaves.
Draws a map now with 3 dead Nazis in this area. There's an inn over there with 3 dead Nazis, and I've drawn them. It's all just poor stick figures with a knife sticking out of them.
Yeah, pretty much.
He's making one of them poop while they're dead. This one was pooping. He was pooping while he was dead. The other one was peeing, and the other one was just dead. His head was in the other guy's crotch. I don't know what happened. I walked in late. That's silly.
Yeah. So that's sort of how it happens.
But that's cool.
Yeah. That's
real
cool.
life
So,
Nazis.
Real life Nazis, and that's not his only encounter with Nazis. Not his only encounter in battle. He talks about his CO. At one point, he's walking with his CO, and then a second later, he's on the second floor. He himself is on the second floor of a building. Looks out the window, and his CO is just like blood splatter on a wall. He doesn't remember war fondly.
Yeah. Most people don't.
No.
A lot of people don't go, it was the best time of my life. I loved it. Me and this one fella, he would just talk about all the different ways we could make shrimp. He would just say shrimp gumbo, shrimp Florentine. He would name shrimp, and there was rain for days, sideways rain, up top rain, down rain, and then I got shot in the buttocks and met the president. Not everybody's Forrest Gump about war.
That's
Yeah.
I like
Forrest Gump remembers it.
very
fondly.
obvious things.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's at one point he's out scouting behind enemy lines, and this German guy comes up to him and asks him if he's Jewish, and he leads him to a barracks that's locked. Jack Kirby breaks the lock, and inside are a bunch of concentration camp internees, and he's floored. He says there were mostly women and some men. They looked like they hadn't eaten for I don't know how long. They were scrawny. Their clothes were all tattered and dirty. The Germans didn't give a shit for anything. They just left the place, just like leaving a dog behind to starve. I was just standing there for a long time, just watching, thinking what to do with myself. What do I do? Just thinking about it makes my stomach turn. All I could say was, "Oh God." And this is an experience that weaves its way through his comic book art for the rest of his career. Ultimately, he doesn't get shot by a Nazi. He doesn't make it to the end of the war. He ends up with what's called trench boot, which, it sounds like turf toe. What brings, a football player ends up out of the league for weeks. But trench boot is absolutely horrible. In World War I, it actually killed 77,000 soldiers. Just from the British and the UK alone.
I get it. I had a corn on my foot, and I had to go to the doctor. They've taken it out twice, and last time I almost left because the wait was so long. Then these other people came in and they're like, "You still waiting?" And I was like, "Yeah." They're like, "How come you wait here for so long?" And I was like, "I don't know. I need this corn removed." And then they made a big scene and they got to reschedule. And I was like, "Well, then I'm going to reschedule." And I go, "I'm going to leave. I've been here 2.5 hours." Then they took my corn out and I said, "I'm sorry. I was yelling." She goes, "I'm sorry. We were late." So I get it. I've been there.
Similar experiences.
Yeah.
His leg turned purple. They thought they would have to amputate it. He ends up in a hospital. Recovers, war ends, he goes back home. He's awarded the Combat Infantry Badge as well as a Bronze Star. Right? So
one of the top 3 stars.
It's one of the top 3. It's not an easy thing to earn, and speaks to his service during.
What about a Purple Heart? That one's up there.
I don't think you get a Purple Heart for trench foot. But that's up there too.
Oh, he got the Bronze Star for trench foot?
Well, no. I don't know. I tried to find out what he got the Bronze Star for. I imagine it was killing Nazis.
Yeah, I would imagine that too.
So he returns home. The comic book business is a little bit of a mess at this point. He teams up with Joe Simon once again. And
got a Bronze Star for all that he did in Europe.
Yes, yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Man, I just want to tell you guys about Trenchfoot. His feet had become purple with jungle rot and frostbite. It was so bad he was rushed back to Paris, and the doctors considered amputation.
Yeah. It was.
He still got it.
Horrible.
Still got his leg.
He still got his leg. Well, he still had his leg.
Yeah.
Still had his leg.
But probably still does.
He probably still does. Yeah. He probably still does. So, he returns home. Comics are a little bit of a mess at this point, but he finds...
Good to be home.
It's good to be home.
Yeah.
It's good to be home. But
Trenchfoot killing Nazis at knife point.
Yeah.
Good to be back in New York.
Good to be...
You're like, oh, LaGuardia, thank God. That skyline,
Yeah.
Sometimes it's nice to come back and see that skyline.
Yes. And he does find some... LaGuardia, by the way, Jewish mother. Mm-hmm. If you are LaGuardia. Anyway.
I didn't know airports had mothers.
Yes.
Oh, you mean the guy it was named after?
Yeah. Anyways, so they get into love stories and romance comics, and it ends up being a big hit. The quality of these comics is not amazing. Some of the titles are I Am a Pickup, Diary of a Doubtful Damsel, and The Plight of the Suspicious Bridegroom. appeals to the time. They get some good sales from them.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the artists aren't fulfilled.
The artists are not fulfilled.
It's like now. It's like blowing up on TikTok or the IG.
Yes.
The artists aren't fulfilled.
Artists are not fulfilled.
Right.
You consider TikTokers being artists?
No.
Okay. So in 1954, the comic industry changes forever with the Comics Code Authority. So I don't. Do you ever collect comics as a kid?
Very short time.
Okay.
And I grew out of it quickly.
Okay. So I think into the late 90s, the Comics Code Authority was still a thing. And by early 2000s. So the Comics Code Authority is this little stamp.
Great stamp. I remember that.
Yeah, see, right?
Yeah.
Did you know what it was?
No.
I had no idea either. So in 1954, there's this guy, Frederick Wertheim, who's a German-born psychiatrist, right? And he writes this book called Seduction of the Innocent. And it's all about comic books. Mm-hmm. In this, he talks about how Batman and Robin are homosexual lovers.
I've heard many people say
Right?
this. Yeah.
He cites the fact that Robin is handsome, wears tights, and often stands with his legs spread, the genital region discreetly evident. Mm-hmm. That's an actual quote from the book. He talks about Wonder Woman being...
You might want to destroy this laptop after.
He talks about Wonder Woman being a lesbian because she hates men, and that Superman destroys children's understanding of physics because he can lift a building without his feet touching it.
Oh, okay. I get it. This guy was like a cancel culture dude.
Totally a cancel culture dude. Ends up in front of Congress. He's testifying. It looks like comics are going to start to be
Politically correct.
Yes, governed by the government. So the comics companies, publishers join together and create what's known as the Comics Code Authority, which is a way for them to govern themselves. And in it, there's a few lines of what they say. Policemen, judges, government officials shall never be presented in a way such as to create disrespect for the establishment authority. So like some pretty heavy stuff. Some of the stuff not so heavy. Suggestive posture is unacceptable.
Wow.
Yep.
So comics self-censored themselves.
Yeah. They censored themselves.
Wow.
For a long time.
And this ended when?
This was into like the 2000s. I imagine that.
And now they can be violent and outrageous and egregious.
Yes, I imagine that by like the late 90s, but yeah. So
Look at that guy holding up the comics. These are bad books right here, and these books are ruining the brains of children. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to go to a rest stop and tap my foot 4 times at the bathroom stall while I wait for a gentleman caller. Is it that type of thing? Was he like...
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Ernest Debs. Did he have some creepy stuff on him? Let's see if creepy stuff came out about Ernest Debs. Criminal sex cases. Oh, wait.
I think he wrote about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
It was like a little bit of. You got a little bit of like McCarthyism in this.
Seems like
stuff.
one of these
Same
weird
sort
congressmen that's hiding something. You know?
Totally. Oh, there he is. Surrounded by.
Oh, look at all these lovely
bathing
naked
suits.
ladies. Yeah.
That looks like suggestive posture.
Yeah. Boy, see?
Right?
Yeah, he was a dirty guy.
Right?
Didn't want other people doing dirty stuff. It's who they always are. It's who they always are.
That's absolutely true. So he ends up back not begging for a job, but asking for a job from Stan Lee, who is now running Marvel.
Okay.
Right? Stan Lee knows what a quality guy Jack Kirby is, how fast he is at drawing, the stuff he'll be able to create. So he brings him back on board in Marvel. And this is where things really blow up. This is where Stan Lee and Jack Kirby create like all those superheroes that are still around today and making billions of dollars.
Yeah.
So this is a list of what he created.
Okay.
Not a complete list, but a start. So he created the Fantastic Four, created the Hulk, Thor, Doctor Doom, the Black Panther, X-Men, Groot, Ant-Man, the Inhumans, the Eternals, Kang the Conqueror, Ego the Living Planet, Blob, Darkseid, Steppenwolf, Magneto, the Avengers, and Iron Man. And that's not a complete list. I mean, he was prolific in his field.
Do you think he just sit home and go, I got an idea. Here's this, here, Ant-Man. I'm going to do this.
Yeah, so he would sit down at noon and work until 4 o'clock the next morning.
Okay.
Just straight through.
Yeah, I do that all the time. I do it. It's a lot. 16 hours straight.
Right, no problem.
16 hours.
No problem.
Yeah.
He's creating 6 pages a day when most people are struggling to do 3.
Okay.
Just an unbelievable talent. He creates The Thing, who is Jewish and who he most closely relates to. You know, The Thing is a Jewish guy from I think it was from the Lower East Side.
Yeah.
And grew up on Yancey Street. All these things all these connections. He's like a little bit misunderstood, gruff on the outside, and becomes a reflection of Jack Kirby. He also creates Nick Fury, and he says, Nick Fury is how I wish others see me. Ben Grimm, who is The Thing, is probably how they do. Now, there's a whole controversy around Spider-Man because Stan Lee and Steve Ditko are credited with creating Spider-Man. Jack Kirby is sometimes mentioned. According to Kirby, he's much more involved. But if you happen to create a video that says he created Spider-Man, people will get angry.
Okay.
So we'll leave the Spider-Man aside for the time and let that controversy.
It's like the Beehive. If you say bad stuff about Beyonce, people get crazy. Yes. That's the spider web.
Yes.
They get all crazy.
So, you know, this is really the high point of Kirby's career. In 1978, he moves to California. He starts to work with Hanna-Barbera. And what's
For the money?
For the money.
Yeah.
For the money. What you really find in these later years, for a good time, Jack Kirby is just not getting the recognition that he deserves.
Okay.
You know, creating these comics back in the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, there was no royalties. You know, it's just like musicians back in the day. They recorded the music, the producers put it out, and the record labels made tons and tons of money off them, and beyond. It was the same thing with comic books. And it took until probably the 90s before he started to get any sort of real recognition. It's most evident in the 1986 2020 episode where Stan Lee is interviewed and makes no mention of any of the other creators that worked with him.
Wow.
He talks about his creation, Spider-Man, X-Men, Hulk and Silver Surfer, never mentioning Steve Ditko, Jack Kirby, or any of the others. Now, you know, there was, I imagine that there was, some luring going on with those conversations.
Marvel issued a release that demanded Kirby affirm that his art was created for hire, allowing Marvel to retain copyright in perpetuity.
Yeah.
In addition to demanding that Kirby forego all future royalties, Marvel offered him 88 pages of his art, less than 1% of his total output, if he signed the agreement but reserved the right to reclaim the art if Kirby violated the deal. After Kirby publicly slammed Marvel, calling the company thugs and claiming they were arbitrarily holding his creations, Marvel finally returned, after 2 years of deliberations, approximately 1,900 or 21 pages of the estimated 10,000 to 13,000 Kirby drew for the company.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, so they had all the originals. And he just wanted, obviously he wanted more, but he just wanted his originals back because those were selling for absurd amounts of money at Comic-Con and at comic book shows. Yeah. They refused to give it back, though. And then ultimately there was some litigation and he received a portion of it back. As we get closer to like current day, both DC and Marvel have gotten much better about giving him credit where credit was due, to provide him with some royalties, and you know, today I think his legacy is more well known. I would personally love to see some sort of nod to him in one of the MCU movies. I'd love to see, like, you know, they could certainly like put a picture of him in one of the MCU movies, something like that, to give this guy what he deserves. On February 6th, 1994, after 50 years of marriage, Kirby passes away, and his creations live on in the hearts and minds of all the fans. Fantastic Four, the Avengers, Thor, all these heroes are making billions of dollars and being introduced to new generations of fans. So it's amazing to see his work continue on.
That's great. Badass Jew did the baddest ass of stuff. Stabbed men at close range. Finally won a long, drawn-out legal battle with corporate thugs. Trying to get the word out there about Jack Kirby. Hopefully this episode does something for him. Not saying it's a Marvel movie, but we should be able to get enough views on this. Rating, Badass Jew, 1 to 10. Jack Kirby.
I'd give him a 9.
I'm going to go with a 9.3 since he killed Nazis with a knife. That's up there, dude.
That's up there.
And that's all that we know about. And he had that weird boot disease. The old Italian foot, whatever they call it. I just said Italian foot because Italy looks like a little boot. He gets a 9.3. Is that what I gave him?
9.3.
9.3. Jack Kirby, King of Comics. We will be back next week with more Badass Jews. I'm Aaron Berg, Andrew Davidsburg. Pete on the 1s and 2s for Badass Jews. L'chaim.